listening to The Blitz, college fantasy football show with the Scholar and Emil.
And yes, it is the Blitz College Fantasy Football Show, week 9 of college fantasy football with the Scholar, Scholar Laub, and little me, Emil Kadlec. How's it going, John?
I'm doing better than Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to miss him this weekend, having tested positive for COVID-19. We'll see if he can play against Notre Dame. Is it 9 days or 10 days? We're going to see if he's able to play. We also had 3 games were postponed or canceled this week. And, of course, we have our litany of injuries. So we're here to help you tonight to build your team so that you can win your games, and maybe if you love DFS like I do, you can put together winning cash game lineups.
Fantastic. All right, let's go to the first view graph.
Everyone who's been watching us knows that we begin at the top of the board. And Emil, I cannot believe it this week. The top of the board is an over-under of 82 and a half, my friend. 82. It is UCF, one of the top 2 or 3 offenses in the nation. They're just electric. And they are traveling to Houston to take on the Cougars this week. We all know about Dylan Gabriel, Marlon Williams, and Jalen Robinson. Those guys are absolute no-brainers. But the player that has really popped for the Knights the last couple weeks is running back Otis Anderson. Earlier in the year, I had discussed how the Knights tend to run a running back by committee, 3 backs. They've had a couple players hurt, and the player who's really popped to the top right now has been their Otis Anderson. He's the one player that you want right now more than anyone else in that backfield. The last 3 weeks, Emil, 84, 70, and 46 yards rushing. He's got 4-0 and 2 receptions. Oops, I'm sorry. I made a mistake, everyone. I hit the wrong button. It is actually Greg Mcrae. Every once in a while, you make a mistake. Sorry. I was so excited about talking about Trevor Lawrence. The running back you want is Greg Mcrae. That's the challenge with live video, right? You don't get a redo or anything
makes it entertaining.
Greg Mcrae, 17 carries for 78 yards, 25 carries last week for 162 yards. Oof. He has scored each of the last 2 weeks. He also has 5 receptions for 42 yards. What is interesting about this? The Knights have had a problem closing games. They've lost twice this year. And both times that they lost, they can't grind the clock. So the coaching staff and the organization has said if we're ahead by 14, 21, 24 points, we need to kill some clock. We can't play hurry-up offense. So they're trying to learn very much how to run the clock down. And Greg Mcrae has been the benefit with lots of touches. Also helps that they've had injuries out in the backfield. But if you need a running back right now, go get Greg Mcrae. Last I looked, he was available in over 60% of college fantasy football leagues because people were not getting into this backfield. Go get him now. Greg Mcrae, he's a great option this week. Now, Houston on the other side. Their quarterback, Clayton Tune, is still wildly under-owned. He was available in about 60% of leagues also. You're telling me you're getting a home quarterback that is an underdog in an 82.5 over-under. If you lost Trevor Lawrence, if you lost Graham Mertz of Wisconsin, or you were hoping to play him, go immediately and get Clayton Tune. I like him in this game. He's going to be throwing the ball a lot. If you need a running back here, Kyle Porter of the Cougars should also be available. Between either Mcrae or Porter, one of those 2 backs should be available in your league. Last 2 weeks, Porter has gotten 94 and 52 yards back-to-back. But what I like about him, he has 7 receptions for 95 yards and a touchdown the last 2 weeks. Kyle Porter or Greg Mcrae, those 2 running backs, are ideal starters to get this week in our marvelous matchups if you need a running back. We're going to go to the Sun Belt now. Troy and Arkansas State. First, if you do need a quarterback, you can go to Troy. Their starter last week, we talked about him on the show, Gunnar Watson. We loved his name. But unfortunately, our man Gunnar got hurt last week, and he left the game. It does not look like Gunnar's going to be back this week. If you need a quarterback and you're looking on your waiver wire, Jacob Free is the backup. He came in last week. He was 24-38 for 329 yards and 2 touchdowns. Granted, he got you 2 interceptions, but he's a young player in a high-octane offense in the second highest over-under. Go get Jacob Free if you need someone there. And Arkansas State, if you got him, start him. This has been a conundrum all year because they do a dual quarterback with Logan Bonner and Lane Hatcher. However, both can be productive. I would only start one if you're desperate, but you can't go with those 2. And their receivers, Jonathan Adams, Brandon Bowling, Duha Green. If any of them are available on your waiver wire, go out and pick those players up. They are great players to put into your lineup. Love that over-under, Emil. Troy at Arkansas State in the Sun Belt. Now we're going to the Big Ten. Huge game. Can't wait to see this. Oklahoma at Texas Tech. Spencer Rattler's playing better football. Remember, he's a redshirt freshman. He's in Lincoln Riley's offense. He's starting for the first time, but he's starting to put up points. The Sooners are playing a little bit better football. They are putting points on the board. They have 2 players that I really like that you might be able to pick up. In the backfield, TJ Pledger got an opportunity in Week 6 against Texas because of injuries. In the last 2 games, he's carried the ball 22 times each game, 131 yards and 122 yards in back-to-back games. He also scored 3 touchdowns rushing. He's not a prolific pass catcher. He's only had 2 receptions in the past 2 games. But you're looking at a starting running back in a high-profile offense that is loaded on the road at Texas Tech. I like TJ Pledger if you need him. And the wide receiver, one of the best freshmen in the nation, Marvin Mims. Whoa, has he been playing great, Emil. Yeah. Just in the last 3 games, he is wildly efficient. He doesn't get a lot of targets and a lot of catches. But when he does, they are crazy efficient. 3 for 33 isn't outstanding. But let me give you these other 2. 4 for 52 and a touchdown. Last week, 4 for 132 and 2 touchdowns. In his first 5 games as a collegiate, 19 receptions, 328 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Nice. Marvin Mims, got to be in your starting lineup. Go and get him if you need someone. If you need a quarterback also, and a lot of people, I was scrambling over the last 48 hours looking for a quarterback. I like Henry Colomby here of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. He's a 15-point underdog on the road, but they're going to be playing catch-up. He's only owned on 6% of the team, mostly because he did not start the season. Alan Bowman did. But I like Alan Bowman, but he just can't stay healthy. Henry Colomby led an upset last week against West Virginia. He passed for 169 yards, he rushed for 40, and he's totaled 2 touchdowns. Colomby's in a good spot here where you should get a lot of garbage time production. What I also like, the Sooners give up 252 yards per game to their opponent in the air, and they surrender 26.8 points per game. If you need a quarterback, go get Henry Colomby of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I like him a lot. One of the games that I'm looking forward to tremendously tomorrow is in the ACC. Obviously, we know how good Clemson is. Miami's playing better football this year. Notre Dame's in the conference. The ACC is strong this year. Two of the top offenses. They're not necessarily the best teams, but they have good dual-threat quarterbacks. Hendon Hooker of Virginia Tech and Mikael Cunningham of the Louisville Cardinals. Go get those two players. I'm going to talk about Javian Hawkins, the running back for Louisville, shortly. He's owned by everyone, and you know to start him. Tutu Atwell and Des Fitzpatrick are the wide receivers. You may want to start one of those if they're on the waiver wire. Most likely Fitzpatrick. And in Virginia Tech, last week under the spotlight, we talked about Khalil Hooker. He's gone now, but you have Tavian Robinson, the wide receiver, Trey Turner. You could think about any one of those two pickups. And they have a great tight end, James Mitchell. I've been playing him in 4 of my season-long leagues. He's having one of the great seasons of a college fantasy football tight end out there. He's got 15 receptions for 265 yards and 4 touchdowns, averaging nearly 18 yards a reception. Do not think of the NFL when you think of college fantasy football tight ends. Those numbers for James Mitchell put him in the top 10 at the tight end position. Go ahead and grab him, everyone. And the last game, SEC, LSU at Auburn. Now, Auburn has been frustrating all season. And if you're like me, you watched them a lot, but you've been frustrated. Bo Nix, Seth Williams, Anthony Schwartz, they're all up and down. It's basically because Nix is inconsistent as a passer, and that affects his 2 wide receivers. Also, Seth Williams was hurt, and he had a difficult matchup, so he's been wildly inconsistent. But he's coming off a great game last week. The best offensive player on the Auburn Tigers is Tank Bigsby. You need a running back. Tank Bigsby, the freshman, is one of the tops in the nation. We've highlighted him in back-to-back weeks before this tonight in our Fantastic Four, and he scored over 20 points 3 weeks in a row in college fantasy football. You got to put him in your lineup, folks. Now, LSU, it is amazing when you consider the turnover on offense this year. Obviously, we know about Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson, how well they're doing in the NFL. And Chase, I can't remember his name right now. He should be the wide receiver, should be a first-round pick in the NFL, and he decided to sit out the season. And Joe Brady went to the Carolina Panthers, and they played last night and lost that game to Atlanta. But this offense, Emil, is starting to cook again. Great. If you have not noticed, they are putting up points in bunches. They have a freshman tight end, Eric Gilbert, wildly productive. Put him into your lineups, folks. I'm going to talk about their star receiver in a second. But in the backfield, they have a very interesting duo right now. John Emery Jr. and Tyron Davis-Price. They're each playing well, and if you need a running back, I like Tyron Davis-Price, and I'm going to talk about him later. But both those running backs might be available on your waiver wire, and you're talking about a team that is averaging over 40 points a game on offense. Go pick up either of those 2 running backs. And Miles Brennan opened the season at quarterback, but he's not likely to play again. TJ Finley played last week, and he was good. Now, he wasn't as good as Joe Burrow or Miles Brennan, but it was his first real game action. 265 yards and 2 touchdowns. What I like about him, he had 24 yards rushing and a touchdown. There's a very good chance that TJ Finley, the LSU quarterback, is on your waiver wire. If you had Miles Brennan, you have KJ Costello. If you had Terence Lawrence, you need a quarterback. I think you could do pretty well with TJ Finley in this game against Auburn. And Emil, that's our marvelous matchups and some sleepers to consider.
Beautiful. All right, the next slide.
So every week we like to go under the microscope. And this week I got two players who are playing great football. One of them is probably overlooked in the NFL draft circles, but we better get used to hearing his name. Javian Hawkins of the Louisville Cardinals. He's a redshirt sophomore. The reason why I think he's overlooked, people think he's small. He's 5'9", 196. My friends, he is not small. And he is a very, very good running back. Last year, the numbers were silly off the charts. He had 1,525 yards rushing. He averaged 5.8 yards a carry, and he scored 9 touchdowns. Javian Hawkins is a very good player. You need to watch him tomorrow against Virginia Tech. This year, he's off to another phenomenal start. He has 693 yards rushing. He has 6 touchdowns. What I like, last year he only had, let me get it right, he only had 4 receptions. That is right, 4 last year in the entire season. This year he has 11 receptions. They're using him a little bit more in the passing game. He's showing us that he's a better pass catcher than we thought. The young man runs with passion and purpose. He's very tough to bring down. He can run between the tackles. He follows his blocks, and he explodes in the open field. Javian Hawkins, you better get used to this name. He is a very good player. Let me just take a drink here. My mouth got dry all of a sudden. And it is amazing the talent that LSU has had at the wide receiver position. I spoke earlier. Jamar Chase was going to possibly be a top 5 pick at wide receiver. And he still might be a top 5 pick. But he decided to opt out, and we have not even seen him. So LSU lost Justin Jefferson, who's now a star with the Vikings, and they have a possible top 5 pick in the NFL draft in Jamar Chase at wide receiver. And this young man, Terence Marshall Jr., and he is a junior in college. He is 6'3", 200 pounds, Emil. He has scored in every game this season. Emil, these stats are sick in 2020. In 4 games, folks, 27 receptions, 512 yards, and 9 touchdown receptions for the LSU Tigers. 6'3", 200-pounder. This LSU program just oozes talent at the wide receiver position. Remember, they had Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry at the same time on that campus. We have possibly the offensive rookie of the year in Justin Jefferson. They have Jamar Chase, who should be a top 5 pick. And now Terence Marshall is definitely a second-round pick in the NFL draft. He might become a first-round pick if he continues to record these types of numbers, and if he goes to the combine and rocks it, which I expect him to do. He's an incredible wide receiver. The talent at LSU, it almost is as good as Alabama. I can't even believe I'm putting it in the same sentence. But you've got to watch Terence Marshall Jr. of the LSU Tigers. So under the microscope this week, check out Javian Hawkins of the Louisville Cardinals and Terence Marshall Jr. of the LSU Tigers.
Beautiful. Off to the next view graph.
We have our sleepers. Now, some of these can apply for DFS, but I'm not identifying these sleepers based on salary. These are just players that you can pick up if you need help on your season-long leagues. And you might look in DFS and you might want to start some of these players, so it's totally up to you. First one, Joe Wilton of Michigan. Watch that game. I bet against Michigan. I liked Minnesota. I gave them last week in the bets. And Michigan went to Minnesota and whacked them. I mean, they just took them to the woodshed, Emil. And the reason why? Joe Milton. he was so much better than I could have expected. It was interesting because usually when Michigan has a star on their offense, you hear about it. But we did not get a lot of information or a lot of hyperbole about Joe Milton. But when I started watching that game, there was nothing you can't notice more than the young man is 6'5", 243 pounds. Now, I was listening to someone, and he compared him to Cam Newton. I'm not going to go that far yet because Cam Newton was a special player at Auburn. Remember, they were undefeated, won the national championship, and he won the Heisman. Now, I like Joe Milton. I see he is a dual-threat quarterback with a real big arm, and he is difficult to bring down. You got to tackle, hit him below, and wrap around this young man. But he is a good thrower of the football. Last week, he was 15 of 22 for 225 yards and a touchdown. He had 52 yards rushing and a touchdown on the ground. In college fantasy football, we love those dual-threat quarterbacks. Joe Milton is a junior. If you need a quarterback, I like Joe Milton this week because you have a very nice floor. So I like Joe Milton because of his running ability. I talked about LSU earlier. I don't know. I got allergies. I'm sorry, everyone. I talked about LSU Auburn earlier. Tyron Davis-Price. In this game, Auburn is surrendering 180 points per game on the ground. We know that LSU is scoring over 40 points. It's actually 42 points a game, and their offense is rolling up 484 yards. On Wednesday, he was only owned on 39% of college fantasy football rosters. If you need someone right now, go out and get Tyron Davis-Price of the LSU Tigers. I like him in this game against Auburn a lot, my friends. I mentioned it before. Greg Mcrae of the UCF Knights. I'm getting the number one running back on arguably the most prolific offense in college football, where an 82.5 over-under. Go get Greg Mcrae of the UCF Knights. I also alluded to Marvin Mims. If you want a wide receiver, go get Marvin Mims of Oklahoma. Let me see what percentage he was on the other day when I was looking. He was available in 50% of leagues. Texas Tech is giving up 337 yards passing a game, and they surrender 37 points per game. Marvin's is in a great position to smash. Go out and get him. And last but not least, you need a wide receiver. I don't understand how Xavier Hutchinson is owned on less than 10% of teams, my friends. The Cyclones wide receiver has been very good this year. He leads the team in receptions and yards. He also has a 25.8% of the team target share. They are basically funneling their offense through two players. Their running back, Breece Hall, who we highlighted 2 weeks ago, in our Blitz, the show, and he's been great. And the other player is Xavier Hutchinson, the wide receiver. And to give you an idea of how poor Kansas is against opposing wide receivers this season, here's some numbers that they've surrendered. Javian Hawkins, 374 and a touchdown. Tylan Wallace, 148 and 2 touchdowns. Bryce Ford-Wheaton, 5 for 89 and a touchdown. And a rack, who's a pass-catching dynamic. Deuce Vaughn, 11 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown. Xavier Hutchinson is in a great spot to smash against Kansas, everyone.
Beautiful. All right, off to the next view graph.
My good friends, when you go to DraftKings, it says 14 games, but the Nebraska-Wisconsin game has been canceled. So there's only 15 games to choose from. So right away, make sure that you don't have anyone from Nebraska or Wisconsin in your lineups this week. I always like to give you a lower price quarterback. And I had talked about some of the big games last week. Indiana upset Penn State on a last-second play by Michael Penix. And it's a little bit controversial. Did he get in or not? The bottom line is it counted in college fantasy football, and Indiana got the W. But Michael Penix is now playing Rutgers this week. I like Michael Penix and Indiana to start out 2-0. He's only 6,200. And when you look at the big board here, we have high-priced quarterbacks. Sam Ellinger, 9,900. So basically 10,000. Brady White, 9,700. Trevor Lawrence was 9,300, but he's off the board. So if you want to pay up for one of those great quarterbacks, you need to save money. Michael Penix, we featured him last week on the Sleepers. I like Michael Penix here against Rutgers, 6,200. One player that I've been rolling with all season, I'm going to continue to. Jaron Ely of Mississippi. He's in a very good position. He's a starting running back against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's not a very good football team. I like Ely here. There's a lot of high-priced running backs up on the board. I don't think you can bypass them. I'm going here with Jaron Ely of Mississippi at 6,600. I've talked about him, Javian Hawkins. Emil, there are some times in college football where a player just starts to pop so much. It was like Melvin Gordon at Wisconsin. You just had to have him in your lineup on a weekly basis. Michael or Lamar Jackson at Louisville. Javian Hawkins is almost at that position. Last week, he scored over 40 DraftKings points. In the previous three contests, 22, 15, and 27. Javian Hawkins here is home against Virginia Tech in a huge over-under. Love Hawkins here for 7,600. And I needed to save all of our viewers some money on the salary cap. Go Whop Philyaw of Indiana. He's their number one wide receiver. Michael Penix should find him in the end zone against Rutgers. So that is my fantastic four for the day slate tomorrow. Michael Penix, Jaron Ely, Javian Hawkins, and Whop Philyaw.
All right, that's another unique name, Whop. We've got a few of them this year.
Yeah, it is.
All right, off to the next slide. Here we are.
And if you're like me, you can't get enough action. Let's go to the evening slate. There's 7 games, so this is actually a decent-sized slate. And so far, none of the games are canceled. So that's good news. We got a full slate to choose from. The first one, we need to save money again at the quarterback position. So I'm going to go, we got a lot of savings here. Connor Bazelak of the Missouri Tigers is a starting quarterback in a huge game against Florida. Now, there's risk here. If he was over 6,500, I might not take him here. But 55 is basically the bare minimum for a college starting quarterback. He has had 2 games where he's been the starter. I like him a lot this week against Florida. Mizzou's going to be playing from behind. The Gators have an explosive offense with Kyle Trask. There's no question at home they're going to put the points on the board. What will that force Connor and the Tigers to do? Throw the football often in the fourth quarter. I'm getting a minimum price starting quarterback. I only need about 16 points to hit 3 times value. If you get 280 yards and 2 touchdowns, you will get your 16 points. I think he might throw 3 touchdowns in this game. Connor Bazelak of Missouri Tigers against Florida. Then I talked about him earlier today. I like T.J. Pledger in this game. Starting running back of the Oklahoma Sooners. He's 6,400 against Texas Tech on the road. If you want to calm your quarterback down, the young Spencer Rattler. It is not a coincidence that Rattler's played better football the last 2 weeks. One of the reasons why is because they've been running the football more effectively. Lincoln Riley understood that he had put a lot of pressure on a redshirt freshman to make this offense go. So how do you fix that? You put the pressure on the running game. TJ Pledger is the young man who has been over 122 yards the last 2 weeks, and he scored 3 touchdowns. Take him here against Texas Tech. Then I'm going to go with Ania Smith, the running back of the Texas A&M Aggies. Now, he splits time with Isaiah Spiller, but why I like Ania Smith, he's the pass-catching dynamic back. He plays a ton of wide receiver. They move him all over the formation because they had Isaiah Spiller, but they wanted to get their 2 playmakers on the field. So even though Ania Smith qualifies as a running back, he has up to 7 or 8 target gain in him. He's also a very good route runner. He has good hands, and he can score running or catching. So I like Ania Smith of Texas A&M here. And college fantasy football is a little different than NFL. I think the Sooners might put up 45 points against Texas Tech. And if that's going to happen, that means wide receivers and running backs will score a bunch of points. I like Marvin Mims for 6,200. I'm okay with putting 2 Sooners in this game. It is different than the NFL. Now, you can do it when you have a pass-catching back in the NFL, but it's rare that I would ever recommend a receiver and a running back in an NFL cash game lineup. But in college fantasy football, it's a different game because the ceiling of points scored is much higher. So go ahead and put Marvin Mims in your lineup. That's my Fantastic Four for the evening slate. Connor Bazelak, TJ Pledger, Ania Smith, and Marvin Mims, my friend.
All right, off to the next slide.
All right, what we want to do, we have on Football Diehards an incredible slate of weekly live streams. And we want you to be able to enjoy and get all the knowledge that you need. We kick off the week every week on Wednesday nights with Todd and Kyle. Is it Jason and Kyle?
Yeah.
I can't see the slide from my
Jason
end.
likes to be called Brady. So.
Oh, Brady and Kyle. And they kick off on Wednesday night. And then Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock, we have Ask Me Anything Fantasy Football with the Hall of Famer Bob Harris. Then we have on Saturday night, Emil and I return with the Line of Scrimmage DFS Cash Game Show. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And then there's Prop Till You Drop, NFL player prop bets with Jen Ryan. And have those been on Sunday the last 2 weeks, Emil?
Yeah, and this week it's going to be on at 9 o'clock Saturday morning. So it'll be the first show we do Saturday morning this week.
There you go. We have a great lineup every week of 4 weekly live streams to help you with your DFS lineups, with your prop bets, with your cash games, and any questions that you have about fantasy football.
And also, the pricing now is $12 for the rest of the season, and you can use the Diehards code to get another 15% off of that. And also, Brady and myself do the final DFS show at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, a.m. on Sunday morning. So a little fifth bonus for everybody. All right, off to the next slide here.
All right, I always got to be honest. Last week was not kind to me, my friends. I don't want to mislead anyone. I had a terrible week, 0-4. I'm now 10-12. If you like to gamble, if you like to put some side wagers on, you're going to have bad weeks, and last week was one of them. So I apologize for all those who came on board with me, but I've been studying for the last 48 hours. I'm here for you, and I think I got 3 winners this week that I feel great about. I'm going to start with Iowa at home against Northwestern. I'm going to bank on defense here. We know the Hawkeyes can play good defense, and I don't have a lot of confidence in the Wildcats' offense. So I believe that Iowa takes care of business here. I don't have to give up that 3.5. I definitely don't want to give up the hook at 3.5. So I'm giving up 2.5 at home for the Iowa Hawkeyes against Northwestern because I'm going defense. And you're going to see a theme here. Cincinnati Bearcats. They're ranked in the top 10 in the nation. They're undefeated. They just shut down SMU on the road, and SMU is a very dangerous offensive team, and the Bearcats absolutely shocked them, killed them. Cincinnati has NFL talent in the secondary and at linebacker. They have a good offense, not a great offense, but when you have a great defense, and Cincinnati's in the top 10 in defense, they are awesome. They're at home against Memphis. Memphis, prolific offense, but lots of players have opted out. They're missing, arguably, their two top offensive players. Now, they've been able to replace them so far, but this is when the rubber hits the road. They're going to miss their stars who have opted out. The Bearcats are going to shut down that Memphis Tiger passing game. Take the defense here, -6.5 at home. I love home defenses. They can shut down opponents. They're going to hit double hard, and then they're going to hit harder. Memphis isn't used to this physical of an opponent, and Cincinnati Bearcats are a physical, dominant defense, giving up 6.5 at home. Cats. And Emil, college fantasy football, I want it to be over 83. But my friends, so much can happen to a game under 83. To bet the over, to me, that means I've got to get, 9, 10 touchdowns. It's at 11 touchdowns. Plus, actually, 12 touchdowns. I can't do it, Emil. I can't bet on that. You have a couple turnovers near the goal line. Maybe UCF gets a big lead and they hold back. They want to kill the clock. Houston is prone. They're probably going to turn the ball over 2 or 3 times. To expect both of these offenses to click for 4 quarters and produce 83 points, it's just too easy for something to happen. UCF at Houston, I'm going to go the under 83.
Yeah, you kind of almost need a defensive touchdown or two to get up to 83 points.
You do.
Those are
I
quick.
mean,
you can get a quick touchdown.
Yeah, and it's very easy. If a team gets out, let's say it's like 28-7.
Mm-hmm.
You're in good shape, but they're going to try to slow down the clock. And then if the other team throws a couple turnovers, but they don't score on defense, then that's just there.
Yeah. Or you get lucky and it goes overtime.
Yeah, I mean that's the big
that
danger in college. Yes, if you do get one of those games, if it's like 35-35, you could go to overtime. Next thing you know, it's 42-41. So, but that's the difference in the NFL compared to college. Because remember, each team gets the ball, so you can each score 2 or 3 touchdowns in the overtime, which is great in DFS. But on the gambling side, that hurts you a little bit.
Yes. Oh, by the way, I thought you'd be interested in this. The New Mexico Lobos, University of New Mexico Lobos, where I went to college, they're playing at San Jose State this week, and the game's on. And it was supposed to be here, but they're having it at San Jose State. And today, they just announced that they're now going to be practicing in Las Vegas, Nevada. The University of New Mexico Lobos are going to be practicing in Las Vegas, Nevada instead of New Mexico.
Is it because they believe it's safer with COVID, or is there a reason why?
I'm sure it has COVID related, and I apologize. Okay. Maybe they're playing Las Vegas next week. I should know that too. I apologize, but I just glanced at that and I thought, wow, that That's unique.
It is unique. I would definitely say that's unique. Now, there is the University of Las Vegas, so maybe they do, but I'll look that up. I didn't know that. I'll have to look that up.
They're in the conference. I should have looked it up before I got to it. I'm obviously unprepared. But I thought that's quite interesting for that to happen.
Absolutely, my friend. I want to apologize. I have allergies, everyone, and the weather got cold, crazy, rainy. Oh, wow. And just like that's why I'm coughing tonight. So I apologize for our viewers, but it happens sometimes in the Northeast.
Not a problem.
Especially when you're allergies.
Well, great show. I wish everybody luck tomorrow, and I've got some really nice input for them. Any last words?
No, just enjoy the games, everyone. It's going to be a good day. I wish we could have seen Trevor Lawrence, but you know what? It is what it is, and there's plenty of other great games involved.
Sounds great. Thank you.